to have a government that continues to not function when society keeps moving to their corners, and we're pitting neighbor against neighbor. I just don't see that. It's just not how I want to operate. It's just not how I see the world. I like my neighbors. I like my neighbors who have different politics than me. Running for office was never on my list of things to do. It certainly wasn't someplace that I saw myself going. But we moved to Texas in 2017. I'd always lived in the Northeast my whole adult life, and I was raised in Southern West Virginia. So I come from strong Democrat roots. My father was a coal miner. My mom was a lab technician at the local hospital, both union members. I grew up in a really strong working class neighborhood, and it was a great place to grow up. I loved it. Raised my children in the Northeast. My husband was in the Navy. We got married. We're a nuclear power family, so we've traveled with my husband's job mostly, and that's what brought us to Texas. And we just really like it here. We were welcomed by Hurricane Harvey, which was a bit much. I've never seen mosquitoes that large in my life after that was over, but it was good. It's good. We love our community. And, just as it was really Kate Cox's story about having to leave the state of Texas to get reproductive health care. That was happening just about the time the deadline to file to run was coming up. And I decided to do it. I just decided to put my name on the ballot and jump in. I know Democrats were really looking to see people run so often because it's such a heavily red, my district in particular, it's heavily red, that we often don't even see representation on the ballot. So if for any other reason than to have some representation for an alternative voice, that was my reason for wanting to get into the race. I have a granddaughter now, both my boys are married or about to be married. And so, making sure that we can leave a legacy for them where their healthcare is a priority was important to me. As far as a principle goes or an issue, like when I look at, so I believe being truthful is really helpful. So, making sure that people have good information to make decisions, right? And to understand that somehow we've gotten away from a political climate that is people working together to come up with a solution for a majority of the people, right? So, and we've gotten into these silos of information and participation, and it's not really benefiting anyone. I got the pleasure to attend our independent school district here in Victoria. They had an Insiders Academy that really, you could sign up for it, and we were the first cohort, and we kind of got to go through the whole process of understanding how public school operates in Texas. And my children are adults now, but education is important. My job is making sure that students in high schools understand what their job potentials could be coming out of high school. Maybe they're not a college-bound student and are interested in a trade job or a career in the trades. So that's what I focus on. But those students are coming out of public school, and our public schools are wholly underfunded in Texas. The way that schools are given a daily student allotment based on attendance to function, they're underfunded. Our teachers aren't paid a good salary for their worth, and they're one of the few careers that are so heavily regulated that, you have to have this certification and you have to have this certification and it has to be current and all of these things. And then we want to pay them barely what seems to be over minimum wage, right? So we expect so much and we pay so little to our teachers. And our buildings are in disarray, and our operating budgets are just being cut with underfunded and unfunded mandates. So when I look at what we're giving to our public schools to function and then what we grade them on, there's a huge disconnect there, So getting to go through that Insiders Academy really let me see a lot of the behind the scenes things that I don't think most people really get to take the time to understand. So being an advocate for public education and how vouchers are really going to do a lot of damage to specifically our rural schools where we don't have a lot of public-private options. There's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who do not want to see vouchers come into play. So I know my opponent is all in on vouchers, but I just think it'll be, the final nail in the coffin of public education in Texas. And obviously women's health care, extremely important to me. So if men have reproductive health care issues, we'll just say erectile dysfunction, they can see a doctor and have medication delivered to their house in a discreet little box, right? But when women have reproductive issues, somehow our bodies are up for legislation. And I would just like to see us have the same types of autonomy over our bodies and our reproductive health care that sometimes we afford men without even really seeing, that's what we give a man. Let's give a woman the same opportunity to make sure her health care is where she wants it to be. Because it's important. Our reproductive health care is important. Our sexual health care is important. All of these issues are real issues. Texas, we have the 8th largest economy in the world. Our economy is booming here in Texas, but we sit at the bottom in terms of health care. And that should be a concern for all of us. When Texans are sick because of preventable illnesses, due to the fact that they don't have insurance for pre-screenings and the mortality rates go up, that's not something to celebrate. So we can't be eighth largest economy in the world and the very bottom of healthcare. There's a huge disconnect there. During COVID with Medicaid expansion, we saw more Texans with insurance than ever before. And since that has ended, we're starting to see those numbers creep back up again for uninsured Texans. So that's certainly something that we need to address in a legislative session. There is an issue happening at the border, and our state representative right now, Jeannie Morrison, she's been our representative since longer than I've been in Texas, and even AJ Louderback, my opponent, they have both said that our border is a federal issue, and it is an issue, and it's an issue that needs to be solved with federal legislation. I do believe we need to make sure that we have the resources available locally to, to our police, our fire, our EMT, our hospitals, to make sure that we're able to care for people in the way that they need to be cared for. But at the same time that I hear a lot of folks talk about their concerns about undocumented immigrants, because they always come at it from a place that people are here to hurt us. In the state of Texas, undocumented workers contribute $4.5 billion to our state economy. So it's not all doom and gloom all the time. There's a balance. We need people to come here that want to work. It's always a conversation that gets drug over to everybody's here to hurt us, and we sometimes forget about the contributions made by undocumented people living in Texas. So I think it's always way more complicated than that. And I truly believe at this point, I don't know that they're really interested in solving the problem at all. I mean, there was a bipartisan piece of legislation that didn't get the light of day in Congress. So, and then at the same time, they're telling us that, we need to be concerned and we need to be afraid. We need leadership to do something. That's what we really need. So I'm really hopeful. Colin Allred will make some progress in his race against Ted Cruz, and we'll see something happen up the ballot. And then who knows, maybe they'll do something, maybe they won't. But it would sure be nice to see them try to solve problems the way they should be solved, with legislation from Washington, D.C. I will always say that you've got a good piece of legislation when everybody's a little bit unhappy, right? So that's the art of compromise. Everybody walks away wishing that they had gotten a little bit more than they got. But to have a government that continues to not function when society keeps moving to their corners, and we're pitting neighbor against neighbor, I just don't see that. It's just not how I want to operate. It's just not how I see the world. I like my neighbors. I like my neighbors who have different politics than me. And I think we need to focus a little bit more on what we have in common and try to grow that instead of retreating to our corners and not talking. Is to know your candidates and to know your race, right? Your state and local races really, really, really matter. And all the attention kind of bubbles up to those, to the top. And, you'll go into the ballot box. I've had people say, well, we didn't even know we had a Democrat on the ballot. And I guess some of that's my fault as well. But we just kind of get used to things being the way they've always been. And so we need to make sure that voters know that they should do their due diligence and find out who their candidates are. And when they see an event in town where you have an opportunity to go meet your candidate, or your candidate's, door knocking, take that moment to talk to them. Because I've had a lot of Republicans, our primary runoff with the Republican side was really ugly. And I've been really surprised at the number of Republicans who have come up to me and have said that we don't want to see vouchers come into our community, but we're going to vote for this person up the ticket. So it's just really kind of know your race and know your candidate and make a good informed decision. That would be what I really hope comes to bear. And show up and vote. Like, your vote is your voice. So, we have to vote.